What the fuck? Here's why you should solo travel as an Asian guy. One of the biggest benefits is that you will grow as a person exponentially when you solo travel compared to just living your normal life. This is because it puts you in an unfamiliar environment, and so it challenges your problem solving skills, your like adaptation skills, and because you're solo traveling, you kind of are forced to make friends, and so you also grow a lot socially. In addition to this, it's a great opportunity to see the world and kind of experience its cultures and its people as well. From morning Italian espressos in Europe, to the futuristic cities of Asia, to the bustling night markets of Taiwan, to the beautiful wild nature in Bali, there's a lot of beauty and just aesthetically pleasing things out in the world for you to see. So why emphasize solo traveling compared to traveling with friends or with family? For one, when you're solo traveling, you're kind of forced to go talk to strangers and make friends. It's kind of like power leveling in a video game, where solo traveling and forcing yourself to go talk to strangers and make friends is kind of like power leveling your social skills. You'll have to put yourself in situations that might seem awkward or uncomfortable to you, but in doing so over and over again, you're kind of leveling up your social skills. And when it no longer becomes strange to go like approach a stranger and just start a conversation with them, then your social skills have improved drastically. When you're traveling with friends, you kind of have a social like safety net, where if you want to go and do something, you kind of have like friends to rely and like fall back on. And essentially you always have the safe option of hanging out with your friends, which means that you're not forced to go out and talk to strangers and make friends. In addition to this, when you're solo traveling, your time is your own. You can kind of just go and do whatever you want without having to worry about what other people want to do and like having to account for their like timing and whatever. Essentially, the world is your oyster, and whatever you want you can take, wherever you want to go you can go. And when you're traveling solo, sometimes you're just like standing in a foreign city on like a scenic street or some very aesthetically pleasing place, and this like feeling of amazement and like almost like freedom just hits you, where you're kind of just this like one small dot in this like giant world, but because of this you're able to kind of like travel the world and see all of its cultures and beautiful scenes and aesthetics. It's almost kind of like you're a bird that just learned how to fly in the sky. It's kind of hard to explain, so you just have to experience it for yourself. So those are some of the benefits of solo traveling, aside from it just being like a fun experience. Now let's get to the actual how. The first thing you have to do is to choose a destination. And to be completely honest with you, this destination isn't super important. Most people, when they think of traveling, will already have a destination or like an area in mind that they want to go to. For example, popular destinations include Europe, with like Paris, Spain, Italy, as well as Southeast Asia with like Thailand and Bali, as well as Eastern Asia with like Japan, Korea, and China. People will generally have like very specific destinations in mind that they want to travel to as well. For example, if you really want to get into Muay Thai, then you'll probably want to go to Thailand and like train there, right? Or if you like really love like anime or some shit like that, then you'll probably want to like go to Japan and like kind of check out what it's like in Japan, right? So basically the actual destination you go to is kind of dependent on you and your own personal interests. So essentially just do your own research and kind of just go wherever looks cool. I will say though that there are places in the world that are like financially cheaper to live. For example, Southeast Asia or like Eastern Europe, they're a much better bang for your buck in terms of cost to quality of life ratio compared to more expensive places like Denmark or like Norway or like Singapore, for example. So this is something to consider for your budget. Now on the topic of budget, let's go over some of the costs. One of the biggest things holding people back is that they think, oh, like I don't have money to solo travel. It obviously will cost money, but probably not as much as you think. Obviously you can solo travel on a big budget and kind of like live lavishly, or you can solo travel on a small budget. Now if you're traveling on a tight budget, then you probably won't be eating like Michelin star meals every single day for every single meal, but the experiences that you'll be able to experience just by being in these places makes it very worth it to just go and travel anyways, even if you're not going to be eating the best type of food. So on the topic of food, let's go over this real quick, and obviously this depends on your budget, right? If you're solo traveling on a big budget, then every single meal you can go out to a nice restaurant, eat some like nice like fancy local culinary food, right? But even if you're not traveling on a big budget, if you're on a tight budget, for most people you'll still be able to experience like the culinary cuisine of the place that you're in, right? Like if you think, for example, you go to Paris for a week, that's 7 days, right? So if you like fast for breakfast and just have like a coffee and maybe like a croissant or something, and then just eat lunch or dinner, that's still 14 meals over the course of this 7 days, right? And the thing is, when you're traveling, you obviously want to experience like the local cultural food of the place you're at, because food is just a great like big experience of traveling, and I love food and I love trying new foods as well. But realistically, out of these 14 meals, you don't need to be eating like high quality French cuisine for every single one of these meals, right? If you just eat like maybe 2 to 3 meals of like this high quality French cuisine, then you've technically have already experienced this cuisine, right? And for the rest of it, if you really need to, you can just eat like fucking grocery store bread and like deli meat, right? Now this sounds a little depressing where you're traveling to France and like you're kind of forced to eat like bread and deli meat, but realistically, if you just eat like 2 to 3 meals of French food, then you have already tried and experienced French food. And so if you need to eat like bread and deli meat for the rest of your meals, it's worth it to do so in order to have the other experiences that you'll get from solo traveling. And also realistically, it's kind of all the same 5 minutes after you're done eating anyways. Aside from food, other big costs generally just include plane tickets, lodging, activities, and like maybe the gym. So plane tickets are pretty unavoidable, unfortunately, unless you're able to like swim across the length of the Pacific Ocean. But realistically, there are a lot of flights from the US to Europe for like a few $100. And just kind of like think about it this way. Like a flight from the US to another place in the US is maybe like $100-200, right? A flight from the East Coast of the US to Europe is also a few $100. Now maybe it's like $200-300 or $300-400 instead of like $100-200. So it's still like slightly more expensive, but it's still roughly in like the same like price bracket, right? And so like with this in mind, it's not like wildly out of the question to fly to Europe, right? Like yes, it's expensive, yes, it will cost money, but most people will be able to save this money just from working like a regular minimum wage job. Another tip, especially for us Asian dudes, is really just to like piggyback on family trips, right? At the beginning of the year, my mom planned a trip to Beijing, China, and I kind of like tagged along, right? And in doing so, like they kind of covered my plane ticket and like my like lodging, which was just like staying with family as well as food, just because like it was part of like a family trip. And so this is just like a great way to kind of like almost like teleport to China like for free almost, right? Like obviously like your parents pay for it and like I'm very grateful that they do, but in doing so you're kind of able to just like piggyback on this trip and like be in a different location, and then from then on you can kind of like go off on your own. When she flew back to the US, I chose to kind of like stay in China, and like I've kind of been traveling around Asia for a while. So if this is an option for you, this is definitely something that you can take advantage of. Next up, let's cover lodging. One of the biggest travel hacks is to just stay in hostels. For those of you who are unfamiliar with hostels, they are essentially just hotel-like dorms that are kind of like catered towards travelers. It's kind of like a hotel, but you share a room and a bathroom with multiple people. It's kind of like a college dorm. Because of this, it's a lot cheaper per night compared to a hotel or an Airbnb. Now on paper, this sounds kind of shitty, but realistically, most people who are like in this age group of like early 20s who are solo traveling, they will almost certainly stay in hostels just because it's cheaper. And so as a result, the people that you potentially share your room with are like basically everyone in this like whole like hostel hotel. Most of them are going to be people who are pretty similar to you, which are like younger 20s people who are like solo traveling and seeing the world, and they're probably going to be like in a pretty similar stage of life to you as well. And so the point is that you'll probably have a lot of commonalities, right? And because of this, living in a hostel is one of the best ways to make friends. Another thing is, because a lot of these people staying in hostels are either solo traveling or maybe traveling with a group of friends, they are also probably looking to make friends as well, and so they're like more open to making friends. And so because of this, it's a lot easier to make friends in a hostel. Now this sounds all good and dandy, but the trade-off is the quality of life will be kind of like slightly lower than a hotel or an Airbnb, just because you don't have like as much privacy or room. But like realistically, as a dude who's solo traveling, you don't really need too much to begin with, right? Like a hostel is just like a place to sleep and a place to brush your teeth and wash your ass, right? And like other than that, you'll be spending most of your day like outside exploring the city or like doing work or whatever. So you don't really need like too much. And like honestly, a lot of hostels are pretty nice. Like this is a hostel that I stayed in Copenhagen, Denmark, and this is a hostel that I stayed in Shanghai in China. And they look kind of like high tech, almost kind of those like little like what do you call them? Like those little like capsule hotels that you see on the Instagram reels in like Japan. Now hostels will usually run you about maybe like 10 to 30 bucks per night, depending on like the country that you're staying in. Cheaper countries will obviously be cheaper at around like the $10 to $15 range, and more expensive countries like Singapore, Copenhagen, whatever, will probably be in the more like 30, maybe even sometimes like $40 per night range. But either way, it's a lot cheaper to stay in a hostel compared to a hotel or an Airbnb. And in addition to this, if you're like backpacking for a while and you've been staying in hostels for a while, you still have the option to go rent like a hotel or an Airbnb for like a night or two in order to just like recharge, right? And if you think about just like the total cost of staying in a hostel for most of the time and then just maybe a few nights in a hotel or an Airbnb compared to staying like in a hotel or an Airbnb like the whole time, it'll obviously be a lot cheaper to stay in a hostel for most of the time, right? And there's barely any like quality of life trade-off in terms of like your travel experience. So the point is to just stay in a hostel. Now, before I go over some of the other costs, on the topic of meeting people, I know a lot of you are curious also about like meeting like women in other countries as well, right? And hostels again are a great place to do this. So again, assuming you're living in a hostel, just go up and talk to people. Most hostels will kind of have like a common area like lobby where there's like places to like hang out and like play like games like pool and like fucking what's that other game called? It's like that like other game on like that's like on a table where it's like soccer, but like you move the little rod and like there's like 3 dudes on a single rod that like kick at the same time. I forget what it's called, but you know what I'm talking about, right? But the point is that there's a lot of like kind of like areas like these where people in the hostel will kind of hang out, and this is where you'll meet other people, right? So what you'll want to do is to really just take initiative and just like go up and like talk to random strangers, right? Like you can literally go up to a group of people and be like, oh hey, like I'm solo traveling, like can I like join you guys? And they'll almost certainly be like, yeah sure, like what's your name, man, where are you from, whatever, right? And overall it's just like very chill, like very welcoming. And this might seem kind of uncomfortable at first, but this is like the part where you are leveling up your social skills, right? And eventually it'll just come to like second nature, where you'll just be able to go up to someone in a hostel and just like start talking to them and start like having a conversation with them, right? Now it's the same exact thing for meeting women in hostels as well. So for example, if you're like in like the lobby of a hostel and you see a girl that's like pretty who's like sitting there, you can just like go up to her and be like, oh like hey, can I join you? And then like strike a conversation up, like where are you from, whatever, blah 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 blah, right? And as you do this more and more, you'll kind of get better at doing this and your social skills will level up. Now you'll also be able to make friend groups in hostels as well. So for example, let's say you approach a stranger and you kind of like find that you have a lot of things in common and you really click with them and they kind of become like a good buddy of yours. What you'll now be able to do is ask them if like they want to go like hiking tomorrow or like go to some like popular tourist destination in the city that you're in. And so what you can do is go up to other people, and like if you find that you like get along with someone, you can just kind of invite them along with you on this trip and just say something like, oh, me and my friend are going to this cool like building or like cathedral in like this in the town hall tomorrow, like would you like to join us? And like more than likely they'll probably say yes, because they're probably also looking to make friends as well. And if you just like go around and like ask like multiple people doing this, then you've kind of got yourself like a group of friends to go to this like cool tourist destination the next day, right? The same exact thing applies to meeting girls in a hostel as well. If you go to the common area of a hostel and you see a girl that you think is pretty, then you can literally just go up to her and strike up a conversation with her like you would with literally anyone else, right? Like you're trying to have a good conversation and make a friend as a solo traveler. Chances are she's probably also solo traveling or traveling with a group of friends as well, and is very open to making friends or like maybe even more, right? So if you guys chat for a while and you find out that you get along pretty well, then one, you should definitely like get her Instagram, and then two, you can talk about something like how long you've each been in the city, and then you'd be like, oh, I've been here a few days, have you been to like this museum and like this like cathedral in the town square that I've heard is like really popular? And if she hasn't been, then you can be like, oh, I haven't been there either, would you want to like go and check it out tomorrow together? And just like that, you've got yourself like a date, right? And it's really just as simple as that. So this is why I say hostels are one of the best places to meet people, and like kind of like one of the biggest hacks for meeting people when traveling. So if this video has been helpful to you so far, you'll probably enjoy the community that I'm currently building. And the vision with that is just to have a community of people who are trying to help each other improve in life and to just get better together. It's completely free, so if that sounds interesting to you, then you'll find more about that in the description below.
Jesus. What's your name, Zaphod, bro?
Stanislav.
Denislav?
Yeah.
Bro, well played, Dennis. Oh, man.
No.
What?
I play football.
Okay, nice. We got this.
Another really good way, like another like kind of funnel for meeting people, is to have like a hobby or like an active hobby. So for example, like MMA or like rock climbing, or like for me personally, like ultimate frisbee, and just drop in at a local MMA gym and just like make friends that way. Be like, oh hey, like I'm actually just traveling here, like do you guys have any recommendations for blah 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 blah? And like more often than not, like a lot of these people are like super nice, and they'd be like, oh yeah, like this place is really nice, you can go here, or like maybe here I can like take you there tomorrow actually if you want to. Maybe they'll get food after training as like a group or something like that, right? And essentially in doing so, you'll be able to like meet and talk to and make friends with a lot of people, including locals as well. So having an active hobby is also a great way to meet people. Another thing you can do is to attend free walking tours. In most big travel destinations, especially in Europe, you'll find like free walking tours of a city, like either online or maybe like the hostel will have like information about it. And that's another quick thing. Most hostels will kind of have like events that they host, like a hostel dinner or maybe like a hostel bar crawl or something like that, right? Again, it's just like, it's kind of like an environment created for the purpose of you to meet other people. But essentially, if you sign up for these like free walking tours during the day, not only will you be able to see the city, but you'll also potentially be able to meet new people, because the type of people that sign up for these walking tours are probably also other travelers, right? So again, the best ways to just meet people are to stay in a hostel, have an active hobby and go participate in the active hobby, and go on free walking tours and just like kind of do things in the city. Now, one quick note about meeting girls. Obviously, you can hop on Tinder, Bumble, and like Hinge or like whatever dating app is popular in the area. But honestly, this is one of the best opportunities to practice your cold approach skills. One, because when you're in a hostel, it's like quite normal for you to go up to a stranger and just talk to them. But two, if it doesn't go as well as you planned, like you'll probably never see them again after like that day. So like it doesn't really matter anyways. You can literally act like a Fortnite living autist and like go up and like talk to girls in that like character, and like they'll probably forget you in like 2 days or like a week or something, right? Like you probably don't actually want to do this if you want to go on dates with girls, but like the point is like it doesn't really matter, right? Also, again, if you go to clubs or bars, potentially with like a group from the hostel, then there'll probably be a lot of girls there as well. And again, this is a great way to kind of like go up and talk to them and like practice your like flirting skills and like meet new girls, right? And of all of these kind of options to meet girls, they like all work. Like I've done all of them and have been successful in doing all of them. So yeah, just like try them all and like see what works best for you. Okay, so with that out of the way, we can go back to the boring stuff, which is like talking about the cost and the logistics. So the next thing is activities, right? So in most, like especially in Europe, most activities will kind of cost you like $10 to $20 as like an entrance fee for like, I don't know, some like random like cathedral or like cool building in Europe, for example. Again, free walking tours are a great way to see the city and also make friends. Another really great option if your budget is slightly larger is to do activities on Vider. And this is a really good option if you're in a place like Southeast Asia, for example, where in Bali, if you look on Vider, there's like a bunch of cool things like fucking scuba diving or like maybe like what's it called, like RTVing through like some like jungle or some bullshit like that, or like doing like a sunrise hike in this like really popular or like really cool mountain. These are some like really good options to really just like experience like the nature. In most cities, there will also probably be like a food tour option on Vider as well. So these are also just like really great options to do if you have the budget for it. And like honestly, because they're such good experiences, I'd recommend that you kind of like splurge on this a little bit. And again, we have nightlife. Some places will have an entrance fee of like 10 to 20 US dollars on average maybe, and you probably have to like pay for drinks. I personally don't drink alcohol, and when I was traveling Europe last year and like when I've been solo traveling all around this year as well, like I didn't touch like a single sip of alcohol, and like I've had a good time and also probably saved a good amount of money that way. So I would highly recommend that as well. And finally, the next thing is gyms. The good thing about going to the gym when you're traveling abroad is that most gyms will probably be cheaper compared to like a monthly membership fee in the US. So what you can do is just go on like Google Maps or like whatever maps is used in that like country and just like look up gyms like near you and just find a place that has enough equipment to kind of like do what you need to do. If you're really tight on money, something that I actually genuinely really enjoy is to find like local calisthenics parks nearby in the city. For example, this is one that I went to in Budapest in Hungary, and it was like on an island under a bridge surrounded by like a river. And it was like such a cool location, and there were like a lot of like locals that went here too, just to like do like pull-ups and push-ups and dips and shit. And so if you're really tight on a budget, this is a fantastic way to just like go and get a great workout in just by doing some calisthenics. Not only are calisthenics really great for making you aesthetic, it's also working out under the sun, which is good for your health as well. Honestly, I will say even if you do have the budget to go to a nice gym, I would still recommend trying to find like a local calisthenics park and doing like a workout or two there as well. Just because I think it's like such a good experience to be in like a foreign country and you're just kind of like grinding pull-ups and like push-ups, and like while there's like a really like nice scenic view around you, you're in a foreign country. Again, it kind of just goes back to this like feeling of freedom and amazement that you kind of like feel when you're like solo traveling alone in a foreign country. But it's just like an amazing thing, right? So just go to like a local calisthenics park. And the best way to find these is to go on Google Maps and look for like calisthenics parks, or maybe even just like look up on like Reddit. Like usually for most big cities, there'll be a subreddit for it, and then you can look up like calisthenics on the subreddit, and there'll probably be like some person who asked a question about like calisthenics parks, or you can even just like make a post yourself, right? So that's a pretty high level coverage of some tips to go solo traveling and pretty much why you should go solo traveling as an Asian guy. Some other general tips I would say is to just kind of like generally say yes to as much as possible, and essentially have the mindset that you're kind of trying to live like the most interesting life as possible, and you're creating like dad lore for yourself, right? As someone who really prioritizes like sleep and thinks that sleep is like super important to your health, because it is, even I will say that it's worth kind of like missing out on sleep to kind of gain new cool experiences, whatever that might mean for you in your own solo travels. But just trust me on this. And finally, on the topic of sleep, I would highly recommend to bring your own sleep gear. Me personally, I wear earplugs and eye mask as well as mouth tape. And I think this has been a really big impact on me having like pretty decent sleep no matter like where I go, whether I'm staying in a hostel with other people in the room, or if I'm in like an Airbnb that's next to like a busy street that's kind of loud. It's just a really good way to kind of like get good sleep by blocking out noise and like light and everything. But yeah, again, that is why you should solo travel as an Asian guy. So that's all for this video. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video. Thanks for your time, thanks for watching, and bye bye.